Welcome to Never Rewrite. I'm Isaac Askew.
And I'm Jeffrey Sherman, and today we're going to explore the concept of resource engineering. So, Isaac, you came up with the term and you were thinking about it. You, by accident last week, you
Mm-hmm.
said you realized the crux of something that was resource intensive and that other people didn't realize was expensive. And you realized that there was this leverage point where you could make a big impact
Mm-hmm.
that was invisible to, I guess, most other developers.
Yeah. And there's probably actually already a term for this, or
Oh,
someone's
I'm sure.
maybe somebody. This might be actually the role and responsibility of somebody. I just know from my purview, I had never encountered it myself. I was like, oh, this is interesting. So yeah, what I had come across is like we were going to implement this solution, architectural solution,
Hmm.
and I went to one of the people implementing it. I said, okay, well, this is really cool. Do you know by chance? Do you know how much this will cost? And I was asking not to audit it or any other reason other than like I was wanting to see if our team was going to make not just a cool architectural impact by delivering a different series of architecture that's more reliable and faster and yada yada, but I wanted to see if I could also have a financial win. Like how much cheaper would it be than their current solution?
Hmm.
And this was us swapping the ECS from like one really really over provisioned EC2 instance, and I was just kind of curious to know what the cost difference was. And yeah, you have
Yeah.
Amazon's like calculator and you can do some stuff, but it's not, you're always kind of like, I mean, guessing around like you have to kind of see it in action before you know the precise value, or you think you know
Right.
a
It's
lot
an
about how
estimate.
it's calculated. It's an estimate. Yeah. Yeah. So I asked this engineer how much it was going to cost, and they were like, I don't know. I'm like, oh, okay, well, that's scary to me because like, what if it's more expensive? Way more expensive than their current solution, and they were like happy with their older solution. And I knew
Hmm.
I knew from doing the math it wasn't going to be. Well, the estimate wasn't going to be at least, but I still wanted to know. I was just surprised, I guess, to say like the engineer was not thinking just financially how expensive it'd be. They were thinking this is the right way to do it. This gets us better deploys. We have the blue green deploys. We have scalable
Hmm.
containers. I mean, from an engineering perspective, it was the correct choice. But again, like you really need to know the financial aspect of it to know if it's the correct choice for this company. So
Right.
where I
And
went
how
from
good of
there,
a choice it is, right? Even if it's
yeah,
correct.
yeah, like comparing it to like their current system and their current spending is also, it's imagine if you wanted to sell a win to the product team or to the ops team and say,
Hmm.
hey, this is what we did. Then you'd want to include stuff like this. We upgraded this, and this was actually not even better, but also 60% cheaper. And so I was just trying to find some way to sell the win. And I didn't have access to the information. So I just asked out of curiosity, hey, is it okay if I actually look and see what the budget is for this company and just get like the AWS like breakdown by little graph of how much you're spending for like EC2 compute or EC2 versus compute and RDS, and just they'll have
Hmm.
like a whole like nice little graph because AWS has like a billing area for that.
Okay, what did you find?
Well, I was surprised. Um, well, I knew that we're spending a lot on RDS, but I didn't know just how much we're spending on RDS because we have like one writer and one reader in this project.
Hmm.
Um, and I won't go into the details, but I mean, we're talking like many, many, many times more. Like the EC2 instance did not show up, but for a sliver on this graph because of how large this fat chunk of RDS costs were.
Right.
Um,
Optimizing the wrong thing has very little value.
right. And so this kind of leads into a previous episode where I was like, I knew that we had a really over provisioned database. And
Hmm.
so I worked to basically fix queries so that we could right size the database. And I knew there would
Right
be an
size.
impact. Right
It sounds
size.
like you're going to lay off the database. We're gonna right size the database.
Well, if
Perhaps
it's
replace with
oversized
something from
versus right sized.
offshore.
I think that actually is the term for it, right sizing the database. That when if you go to like their documentation for AWS. Anyway, so I wanted to get it down to the size that was more reasonable because like our EC2 instance was one single instance that had 160 gigs of RAM, and we did
It's a lot
not
of
need
RAM.
that. But it was just at some point someone was just like, I don't know how to solve the problem. Let's just keep buying a bigger, better server, right? So they did the
That
same
works
thing
to
with
the
with the
point.
database. And so at the time I was fixing it, I'm like, I know things are wrong with this database because this is way too big for how much data we have and how much customers we have. It's way too big. Um, like if we look at the queries are way too non-performant. We see like some queries that didn't make sense in context running like 600 times a second, like at night when nobody's using it. And you're like, so we knew there was room for optimization, and we knew that if we optimized it, we could scale it down, and we knew if we scaled it down, we could half the costs. We didn't know exactly how much this impact was compared to other things they were paying for, right?
Sure.
So that's what we went off as, they complained about how expensive it was, and we're like, okay, let's make it less expensive. But until I saw the graph, I was like, oh my goodness. Like if you were coming to the company just to change things architecturally to save costs, you wouldn't focus on any of that. We focused on the ECS piece because we needed that piece anyway, like regardless of cost savings, we needed that piece. But now that I saw the
multiple
graph,
servers, full stop.
yeah, right, yeah. You need multiple instances of your main server for sure, or your main application. So, seeing the graph, I was like really surprised, and I was like, okay, this tracks, and this kind of helps shape your decisions, because maybe now, if we're trying to make a bigger impact or help them, as they get more popular and get more customers and have to scale up again, we have to keep a lot of these database costs in mind. And now that I see how much they're currently spending, I'm like, I bet you we could do a lot more optimization such that their main size is like 2 other sizes smaller than it currently is. And then we're scaling from there as they get more customers, not from here, which is very expensive.
Right.
So all that to say, I was walking around the other day and I got to thinking about, it's interesting from the engineer's perspective that they didn't, they knew an estimate, but they didn't know the precise cost, because they didn't care about that. And a few times that I've talked to engineers about it, they're like, these guys just going to have to pay it because this is the right way to do it. Like that was where their brain was, which is not a good answer.
No,
but I see where they're coming from. Like, this is the correct way to model things. That's just the cost of doing business.
Yeah, in this case, you need multiple servers for your main application server. Like that's
yeah,
true.
But even still, I agree with you. You do need that, but like maybe if you're a startup of 3 people, you don't yet. Like their EC2 instance that was over provisioned might have been a great solution for like the early days.
Sure.
So you might not want to start with that. Like these engineers, like you would start with a fresh company that's not doing anything yet, and maybe they put everything in like Kubernetes, and you're like, oh wait, maybe we should have a WAMP on a server or layup on a server, and work with that until we got some money coming in. We don't need to have a really nice scalable solution until there's something worth scaling for. But separate conversation, I guess. But what was stuck up my mind was like, they don't know how much it costs overall, like the whole company, what they're all spending. Because they're not invited to see the AWS budget. And why would they be? Like, why would they care what the company spends monthly?
They should.
Not an engineer by default. Like a lot of people are very private about how much they're spending. Like you would need to be, they were gracious enough to give that to me. But like if I went into a company and said, hey, can you give me your balance sheets on how much you're spending on everything? Might be something.
Balance sheet and how much you're spending on infrastructure costs are 2 different things, right? Like
I'm talking about balance sheet for infrastructure costs in this context.
Oh, okay.
Not like everything.
Yeah, tell me what you're paying everyone. I need to know so I can know how much to bill you. Yeah, I think people are default far too private about it, and it leads to engineers making really terrible decisions.
Right. So that's what kind of got me on that is this is the first company I've ever worked at that has given me access to that financial information in 10 years, 11 years. So once I saw it, I was like, oh man, we could definitely do a lot of optimization work to save you a lot of money. And so I was thinking about the flip side of that is like, who is the person on the other side that sees that check or that invoice rather come in from AWS and go, yep, that seems like a reasonable amount somebody would spend per month. I'll sign off on that and pay that bill.
It's the CFO, but the CFO doesn't know if it's reasonable. They just know that.
Exactly. Yeah, they don't know if that's reasonable. And maybe they worked at a prior company where that cost was way cheaper, and they're like, "Wow, we spend so much less here." But maybe it's still we're spending a lot more than we expected on our current situation. Either way, my brain is kind of like thinking, okay, the engineers I don't have the permissions, so to speak, to see
Hmm.
how much their solutions cost, and the person paying the bill, maybe depending on the company, might not know the tech aspect of, hey, is this a reasonable amount that I'm paying for architecture
Stuff.
here? So I got to thinking, is there a role, or maybe some companies do this, or maybe the CTO is involved at some of these auditing costs at some companies. I'm not really sure, but I was just thinking it's been very valuable for me to get lucky enough to play this role where I was an engineer who knew the costs, who could target my efforts such that I am reducing their spending. And I was able to actually sell this point to the company too, because like after we did a lot of work on the database to reduce costs, I went through and I found how much we were like a new customer would spend for like a premium plan. It was like 200 a
Hmm.
month or something like that. So I divided what we were spending, or how much we saved per month by how many users that would be if we had like gained that many users, so to speak. And it was like
Hmm.
30 users or something. So after at first I've explained, yay, we did cool database optimizations and things are better now. That doesn't land the product very well. But if I say
No.
we've done so much optimization work that is the equivalent of us gaining 30 paid monthly users for a premium plan, that sells. They were like really like,
Right.
whoa, okay, which is a more exciting way to deliver that. And even higher up, CEO is probably happy that we're doing those kind of things. And there becomes a point where you have to stop the optimization, like you get like diminishing returns at some point. But knowing where that's at is useful too. Where does the diminishing
Hmm.
return stop? Because what you're saying is like, can I pull some people off their work to do a couple things that gains you the equivalent of those users, versus should I just have them still keep working on features that we know customers are going to want to gain them anyway? So either way, I thought that was an
And
interesting
there's a
role.
model there, right,
Hmm.
where you say, hey, this feature we expect is going to gain us, 5 premium customers per year.
Yeah,
And I think that's modeling that a lot of companies don't do either, unfortunately. With we're going to
right.
build this feature and it should gain us this much, and now we can track to it about whether or not
Right.
it's doing what we thought it would do.
So yeah,
Uh,
like I mentioned, I'm sure this role exists at certain companies, or people just kind of by default maybe accidentally do them, or maybe there are some people that were like me, they can see the amount of spending and go, oh, and they just kind of naturally go through and say, hey. But I was just thinking, like some people who look at databases and monitor databases and go, oh, well, we have some queries that popped in the last week that are hitting our database a little harder. We should look into that, and you know, so they're monitoring how like the CPU usage of the database, the queries that are new, how often the queries are hitting, and they recommend things for engineers to do to
Fixing, yeah.
improve that. This, in the same sense, I feel like there should be somebody monitoring spending, which obviously might be somebody who's like the CFO or something, but with the context of technology speaking, is that a ridiculous amount somebody would spend on ECS or S3 or RDS?
Well, I disagree with you slightly. Instead of saying that there should be somebody monitoring the spending, I think there should be somebody publicizing the costs.
Hmm.
So, and working up a model of, hey, 2/3 of our AWS cost is databases, or
Yeah.
90%, or whatever it is, and nothing. Our servers are almost nothing, and just putting it out there and showing people, like, hey, when a new customer signs up, the whatever the costs are not. You're just showing them the breakdown and letting
Hmm.
people make informed decisions based on that. Because I think even just creating observability or visibility into the costs of your infrastructure would be
Hmm.
huge.
Oh,
Like I
I
know.
think that's a way better solution. Publicizing it would be my preference. I would rather it not be a whole different role. But for companies who are shy about it, certainly you need to have somebody to bridge that gap. But yeah, I would highly prefer people not be so picky about sharing some of those details and just share them, because if people can look at that and go, oh, well, hey, like, which is essentially what I did. Hey, I I noticed that we're spending this much and we really don't have to be. Now that I see the queries hitting it, we can refactor this in less than a day and spend way like thousands less. Like, and
Hmm.
that wouldn't have happened if I had not seen that kind of spending. Because from my role, when they were telling me we have to fix these bugs, we have to fix this, and this feature, and it was all this kind of thing. And that's true and important too.
Yeah,
But
bugs are.
when
I
you
think bugs are more important than optimization.
for sure.
Assuming you're
but
profitable and not about to throw a
understanding
business.
right, but also understanding your spending and how much you could
Hmm.
be saving with how little work it might take. Like fixing a bug that takes a week versus optimizing database that can you can fix a couple of queries and add indexes to them. Add or fixing PHP code in less than a day. That might uh, give them all the information they need to make that decision of should I
Hmm.
swap to the optimization work because it's saving so much money.
Right. It goes to trusting your developers, and I don't mean that in a like I don't trust you, but like,
Mm,
hey, I'm gonna give you more information. I'm gonna give you more context, and I'm gonna trust that if you see something, you'll do something.
right.
You're not a machine, and if you don't work in a factory where I want you to fill the bucket and don't deviate. We are
Hmm.
knowledge workers, as it were. Where
Yeah, this kind of reminds me of the previous conversation about like how do you differentiate yourself in a world of growing AI where AI can do a lot of those, simple compute tasks. That means that maybe your role as a human of like coordinating
Mhm.
with people, digesting stories into like how you're solving the problem, or things like this where you might pass by at your work and say, "Oh, that's not optimized." That's where you can use your human aspect, where you can beat the machines. It becomes more and more important where you
Right.
in a world where you have AI able to do more and more of your low hanging fruit kind of stuff.
Well, I mean, the key transition from like a senior engineer to a staff or principal engineer is the going from I produce outputs to I produce results,
Mm.
and
Yep.
the thinking around that of if you could optimize queries or you can cut cost, like or the you can talk about optimizing queries or you can talk about reducing costs,
Right.
and those are the kind of trade off. You're doing the exact same work.
Hmm.
You
Yeah.
know.
And in my younger brain, for sure, it was just like I should optimize this query because it's a bad query, right?
Hmm.
And then later it became I should optimize this query because if it's optimized, there are results that we could do, or results that would happen from that optimization that would be a business win in some way. Uh,
Hmm.
I think still I find many people who, in many engineers particularly, that will stop at the first problem they run into and try to fix things just because it's broken is still not understanding if that's the best use of their time because there's 1,000 broken things. I daily still run into people and it's actually pretty difficult to get engineers to swap off work because you just want to solve this problem. It's right there. Like, I want to fix it. It's on my desk. Please put the ugly thing down. Like, there's so much more work, more effective work. Um, and then when you're vying for like a promotion later, you're like, look at all these, tiny things I built.
Tickets I clicked, yeah,
You're like, well,
but nobody
you're
cares.
right. You worked very hard, but you could have worked smart and hard. Um, I see that a lot too. So resource engineer, though, that was the term I come up
Yeah,
with, but might be a better one out there.
yeah. I don't love the resource engineer. I almost would say a resource evangelist, where the role would be, hey, make sure that everyone understands the cost of the system or the resources that
Mm-hmm.
we're using and their interplay. And maybe that's like a quarterly meeting or thing you publish to your peers of, hey, our
Yeah.
system is 90%, like 90% of the cost of our system is databases. And we're using all of these things. And,
Mm-hmm.
we should do something about that. Or just so you know. And so you can ask the question of, hey, how
Right.
much slack do we have? Like if I need to run something, uh, one question, discussion I had recently, uh, we run the place I'm at, we run very large databases for high compute.
Mm-hmm.
And as a result, we have just tons of available disk. And I'm like, why don't we just denormalize some of this stuff and just fill disk? I'm like, well, but wouldn't that be expensive? No, no, no. It's AWS is part of the plan.
Mm-hmm.
We could 10x our disk usage and it wouldn't cost any more.
Right.
And it could probably say like we could totally just back up into the databases.
Yeah. So having somebody in the role I like the idea of like an evangelist or just checking in every X amount of time to see, oh, okay, should we reflect on how we're operating in this area and
Right.
dedicate some resources to that? or
And
just
from
again providing this is what's happening. It's up to you to make the
right.
delegation if
Well,
it's something important.
in a business context, though, one thing that a business should have, and many of them, from my experience, don't, is how much does it cost to serve a customer, and how and then how much are we getting from the customer. So they know how much they're getting from the customer, and they know their total costs, but they've no idea how much each individual customer costs,
Yeah,
and that's important. If you're going to run a business, because you need to know about that tells you how much you're going to spend to acquire customers. If if a customer's bringing in paying $100 a month, and it costs you $50 a month to serve the customer, and you expect the customer to last a year, let's just putting numbers out there, right? Then you expect to make $600 from each customer. So you could spend
right.
$300 to acquire customers. But
Yeah,
if you don't know how much you're going to earn on it, like if you don't know how much a customer costs, you don't know how much you expect to earn on them, and you don't know how much you can pay to acquire them. And you could easily massively overpay to acquire customers and drive yourself out of business,
for
even
sure.
though each customer is theoretically profitable.
Yeah, I think we're all just beating around the same concept of engineers having a bit more business context
Yes.
on. I think that just helps you make decisions better. Are you working on the right things? If you know how much customers cost, does that help you kind of in your context of what you're building? Are you asking those
Hmm.
questions? How much you have a business feature over here? How much do we expect this to help out our sales or for upselling people getting a new subscription? Do we have any kind of data around that? Or are we just kind of building it and hoping people use it? Any of those things are really useful bits. So ask more questions, engineers. Poke people until they give you answers, give you access to the
Yes.
AWS costs.
Yes. The true answer is you want access to the AWS costs.
Publicize it if
Or I
it's
guess you want ignorance so that you can not be
yeah.
responsible. But you couldn't be responsible and then also improve your career. Anyway,
All right.
we're going in circles. Thank you all for listening. I'm Jeffrey Sherman.
And I'm Isaac Askew, and this is Never Rewrite.